Hi everyone, Helen Blunden here. Hope you're happy, healthy and well. It is time for a new book review, and today it is not Russian literature.
What?
Yes, hold on to your hats. We're not talking Russian literature. It's not that I'm not reading it. Of course I am. I'm not going to let it go this year. But recently I won a competition and in the mail came 3 books. And the competition was from the Australian Independent Booksellers website. And I must admit, I was chuffed when I won the books. So I sat down one day last week and I read this book from start to finish. It is the book I'd like to review today, and it is called The Lovers by Yumna Kassab. Yumna Kassab is an Australian author, and this is her 3rd book. She wrote it last year, published last year as well, and it is a beautiful looking book. I mean, it's really stunning to have on your shelves simply because it is a hard copy. It has a beautiful design in the front with lots of blues if you're that way inclined to have beautiful looking books on your shelves. And it is really a joy to pick up and read. And it's a very quick read, as you can see. And the chapters are short and the writing is quite spacious. So in effect, I think the feel of this book really meant for me that it read like I was reading some kind of poem, some kind of Arabian story, quite lyrical in places, quite evocative in others. And it was really interesting to learn about this story. Now, what is the story about? It is about Amir and Jamila, who we don't know what country they're from, what countries they are from, because they're both from 2 different countries. But we can guess the culture, and they come from two different parts. They had 2 tracks of life, I guess you could say. Jamila comes from a more prosperous, rich background, a more prosperous country, whereas Amir comes from a poorer country. And they live far apart from each other, but they meet each other at a wedding and they fall madly in love. But Amir is also married and is in a loveless relationship. But this story is about Amir and Jamila's love for each other, and in particular, what the blurb on the back says. It says, what happens when we become used to each other, when we become bored, when we anticipate each other's moods like the seasons cycle in a day? What happens when you are tired of me and I tire of you? So very interesting premise. But my life lesson out of this book was really interesting. It just kind of hit home for me, simply because at the same time I was reading this gem of a book, our classic F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby, and reading this one and then reading this one at the same time, there was a link between these 2 books. And in this book, Kassab actually mentioned it as being a quote, love across the lines. Now, the line is a barrier, it is a boundary, it is an obstacle. And the line across here was the ocean, because they came from 2 different countries. The line also was the fact that they came from two social statuses. One was rich, one was poor. One was from a rich country, one was from a poor country. So there was a barrier here. So automatically, for those who have read The Great Gatsby or have seen the various movies, the great barrier between this love story was the fact that Gatsby, Jay Gatz, had come from a very poor background and fell in love with Daisy, who was upper class. And the barrier here was the grey, ashen industrial estate that split, the more expensive regions like the UGG estates from the poorer estates. And this one was between countries. Now, my life lesson out of this one was very interesting. Maybe it wasn't a life lesson. Maybe it was something that I kind of knew. I kind of knew because of stories that happen in my life, because of stories that I've heard happen to others in my life, because of the stories that we hear ad nauseum all out there. And that is love across some kind of boundary, whether that boundary is race, class, privilege, social status, money, background, religion, you name it. If you've got a love story between some kind of boundary, you're going to come across some problems. Now, I know there are those rare exceptions where the love story has worked and, you know, everyone's fine and well. But in the majority of the cases, there's always some kind of problem, some kind of niggling doubts that initially, the love is beautiful, it's great. We can overcome every obstacle, every boundary, but then over time we start becoming comfortable, or there's niggling doubts, or there's seeds of doubts, or others place problems or issues, maybe family and friends put stress or issues on top, that all of a sudden the couple starts to think, why do they do that? I wonder where did they learn that from? Or, so there's little niggling doubts and issues. And it was really interesting. One particular aspect of this book really hit home for me was when Jamila was visiting Amir in his country, and she was looking at the life in that country in the perspective of her rich background, of her prosperous background. So she was looking at, wow, that's so great that her family is able to take her in when she can't fend for herself, or she's got and meanwhile the poorer person would say, well, yes, her family has to look after her because she's got no other option in life. She can't find work, she cannot get married, or no one wants her because of that religion or whatever it is. So that chapter for me made me sit up and think about myself when I was visiting countries, and I would think things as quaint, as interesting, as wonderful. But to a poorer person, that was just part of life. That's just what they did. They had no other choice. And so maybe they looked at me as the privileged, I'm sure they did, as the privileged, person who has a naive outlook of the world. So that was my lesson that I got out of this one. That was one chapter that really hit home for me. I love this book, especially the second part of this book, which was about the letters, where over time Amir and Jamila started to go their separate ways. And Jamila writes letters to Amir, and they are beautiful. They are beautiful love letters, but they're never sent. And I like the fact that the focus was on the love story and not on the problems. So in that sense, you do get to know more about what happened through those letters, as opposed to the beginning, which is about 183 pages. And at times I found the beginning a bit too lyrical, a bit too, I guess I had to reread some of the chapters to try and understand what was happening, simply because it was written in such a lyrical manner. And then the ending was very, very short as well. So I think for me, the life lesson for this one is how, yes, we can fall in love, across boundaries of sort, but those boundaries will always present some kind of problem, some kind of seed of doubt will always arise in that. And, that love will then take its course, whether it goes on and becomes bigger and better because the couple can communicate so well and they could extricate themselves from all the problems or the environment and the expectations of society and all their community expectations of them, or whether they go their separate ways. So this was my review for The Lovers by Yumna Kassab. If you've read this book, or if you've read any of her other books, please let me know. Thank you for listening and thank you for watching. Bye for now.